1945, World War II, the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, are destroyed by the first atomic bombs used in warfare. US President Truman said at the time, "The atomic bomb heralds the harnessing of the basic power of the universe and marks a victory over the Germans in the race to be the first to develop a weapon using atomic energy." On August 6, 1945, in the early morning hours, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay took off from the island of Tinian and headed toward Japan. The bomber's primary target was the city of Hiroshima, which at the time was of considerable military significance, with a civilian population of approximately 300,000. This atomic bomb, with a blast equivalent to 12,000 tons of TNT, flattened the city, killing 100,000 civilians outright and many more over time. The results were terrifying. A third of the city was obliterated, the rest lay in ruins. Those closest to the explosion died instantly, their bodies turned to black char. The bomb killed men, women and children indiscriminately. While Japan was still trying to comprehend this devastation 3 days later, the United States struck again, this time on Nagasaki. The Japanese government sued for peace on the following day, and on August 14, 1945, Japan accepted the Allied terms of unconditional surrender. The Second World War was over. From this devastation, it would be reborn to challenge humanity to a higher destiny. The city engaged in the arduous task of rebuilding, but Hiroshima could never again be just a city. Scarred forever, it became something deeper, rooted in the human psyche, a symbol of devastation and potential extinction, but also a symbol of hope and rebirth.
Oak Ridge, Tennessee, the site of two of America's three great factories producing the atomic bomb. For over 2 years, this secret city had been laboring on the weapon that has changed the world.
6 months after Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, the US government decided that if anyone could figure out how to build an atomic bomb, they had to do it first. They knew the Germans already had a head start. From 1942 until 1949, Oak Ridge, a city of 78,000 people, did not exist on any map.
Within its barriers, a population of 78,000 lived and worked under conditions of incredible secrecy. Shopping centers and newspapers served the needs of the Oak Ridge community.
The city operated 24 hours a day. The plants operated day and night. 840 buses brought people to work here and took them home.
Leading scientists of Britain and America worked as a team according to the plan agreed on long before by Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt. The whole vast operation was hidden under the code name Manhattan Project.
Simply put, the Manhattan Project was committed to expediting research that would produce a viable atomic bomb. The project resulted in the creation of several research and production sites, of which the construction and operations were secret. It began as a small research program in 1939, which eventually employed more than 130,000 people and cost nearly $2 billion US. The formulas for refining uranium and putting together a working atomic bomb were created and seen to their logical ends by some of the greatest minds of our time. Chief among the people who unleashed the power of the atom was Robert Oppenheimer, who oversaw the project from conception to completion. The most complicated issue to be addressed in making of an atomic bomb was the production of ample amounts of enriched uranium to sustain a chain reaction.
Here is the terrific fact of atomic energy. One atom weapon has the explosive power of 2,011-ton bombs.
Finally, the day came when all at Los Alamos would find out if the gadget, codenamed as such during its development, was going to be an enormous failure or perhaps an end to the war. On July 16, 1945, in a white blaze, the gadget ushered in the atomic age. World War II in Asia and the Pacific was fought over the largest area of any conflict in history. Japanese submarines bombarded the Californian coast, and their aircraft carriers raided harbours and sank British shipping off the coast of India. The expanse of land and sea which lay between these places encompasses half of the planet, a testament to the determination of both sides of the conflict. As millions of people celebrated victory in Europe Day, the Allied leaders grimly prepared for the final struggle in the Pacific, where the full weight of the Allied forces would now be applied against Japan. Over the long expanse of Pacific waters between Asia, Australia and North America, the islands which came to fame during the war have slowly drifted out of public consciousness. Places with odd names like Guadalcanal, Tarawa and Siam were the centre of the universe for a world at war, and everyone talked of the latest news there. The war culminated in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and other large aerial bombing attacks by the United States Army Air Forces, accompanied by the Soviet invasion of Manchuria on 8th of August 1945. The 15th of August 1945 saw the surrender of Japan and the end of fighting during World War II. The formal and official surrender of Japan occurred aboard the battleship USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay on the 2nd of September 1945. In May 1945, the Target Committee at Los Alamos, led by Robert Oppenheimer, recommended Kyoto, Hiroshima, Yokohama and the arsenal at Kokura as possible targets for the drop of the atomic bomb. These cities were largely untouched during the nightly bombing raids, and the Army Air Force agreed to leave them off the target list, so accurate assessment of the weapon could be made. The Target Committee stated that it was agreed that psychological factors in the target selection were of great importance. Two aspects of this are: one, obtaining the greatest psychological effect against Japan, and two, making the initial use sufficiently spectacular for the importance of the weapon to be internationally recognized when publicity on it is released. Kyoto had a considered advantage of being an important center for military industry, as well as an intellectual center, and hence better able to appreciate the significance of the weapon. Hiroshima was described as an important army depot and port of embarkation in the middle of an urban industrial area. It also met the criteria in that it was considered a good radar target, was such a size that a large part of the city could be extensively damaged, and adjacent hills were likely to produce a focusing effect, which would considerably increase the blast damage. So from this assessment, the strategic decision was made. Hiroshima was to become the primary target of the first nuclear bombing mission, with Kokura and Nagasaki being alternative targets. The 393rd Bombardment Squadron B-29 Enola Gay, piloted and commanded by Colonel Paul Tibbets, was launched from Northfield Air Base on Tinian in the West Pacific, about 6 hours flight time from Japan. The Enola Gay, named after Colonel Tibbets' mother, was accompanied by 2 other B-29s. After leaving Tinian, the aircraft made their way separately to Iwo Jima, where they rendezvoused and set course for Japan. The aircraft arrived over the target in clear visibility. During the journey, Navy Captain William Parsons had armed the bomb, which had been left unarmed to minimise the risks during takeoff. Second Lieutenant Morris Jepson removed the safety devices 30 minutes before reaching the target area. The Tokyo control operator of the Japanese Broadcasting Corporation noticed that the Hiroshima station had gone off the air. He tried to re-establish his program by using another telephone line, but he too had failed. About 20 minutes later, the Tokyo Railroad Telegraph Center realized that the mainline telegraph had stopped working just north of the city. From some small railway stops within 16 kilometers came the unofficial and confused reports of a terrible explosion in Hiroshima.
When it was all over, 4.5 square miles of Hiroshima was burned and blasted to extinction. The all-shattering devastation in which was born the atomic age. In its birth pangs, 75,000 people were killed, 70,000 injured.
A young officer of the Japanese General Staff was instructed to fly immediately to Hiroshima to land, survey the damage, and return to Tokyo with reliable information for the staff. The staff officer, after flying for about 3 hours, while still nearly 100 miles from Hiroshima, saw a great cloud of smoke from the bomb. In the bright afternoon, the remains of Hiroshima were burning. Their plane soon reached the city, around which they circled in disbelief.
A few miles away was the notorious prisoner of war camp at Ofuna. From this place of foulness and ill treatment, freedom has come at last to another batch of happy soldiers to whom Japanese guards bow as they leave for home.
By August 8, 1945, newspapers in the US were reporting that broadcasts from Radio Tokyo had described the destruction observed in Hiroshima. Practically all living things, human and animal, were literally seared to death. Japanese radio announcers said in a broadcast received by Allied sources. According to the US Department of Energy, the immediate effects of the blast killed approximately 70,000 people in Hiroshima and 40,000 in Nagasaki. Some estimates state up to 200,000 had died by 1950 due to cancer and other long-term effects.
This was Hiroshima after that fateful August of 1945. Today, nearly 5 years after the dropping of the first atomic bomb, the city is almost completely rebuilt, but still yields invaluable scientific data on the effects of an atom blast. In this laboratory and clinic, American and Japanese scientists are conducting vital research to determine the long-range effect of radiation on human beings. Bomb survivors are kept under continuous observation, but the nature of the work also makes it essential to study children born in the city since the blast. Meanwhile, American aid takes care of the many orphans of the atom bomb, children now recovering from the horrifying dawn of the atomic age.
Starting in 1951, the Nevada test site became the primary location for all US nuclear testing. Tests were divided into 2 primary categories, weapons-related and weapons effects. In the beginning, almost all nuclear tests were either atmospheric or underwater. Testing was used as a sign of both national and technological strength, but also raised questions about the safety of the tests, which released nuclear fallout into the atmosphere. Hundreds of these tests were conducted at the Nevada test site in the USA. Because testing was seen as a sign of technological development, halts on testing were often called for as stand-ins for halts in the nuclear arms race itself. And many prominent scientists and statesmen lobbied for a ban on nuclear testing.
In these first official films of American troops' atomic training, we see tabs placed on rifles and other equipment in order to measure the amount of radiation from an atom bomb explosion like this.
In 1958, the US, the USSR and the United Kingdom declared a temporary testing moratorium for both political and health reasons. But by 1961, the Soviet Union had broken the moratorium, and both the USSR and the US began testing with great frequency.
And now comes news that America has staged a combined military and civil defense test in which dummies, cars of recent make, and two types of average house were used as guinea pigs. The test proved that an invading army could be destroyed at close range, and troops took cover only 2 miles from the blast center, the nearest humans to an atom blast since Nagasaki. The troops moved forward to occupy the atomized objective. With them went detector squads using Geiger counters. They found one house and a tank too radioactive to enter. So science perfects the weapons of the future, weapons that we all hope will never have to be used.
The 7th HMS Dreadnought was the United Kingdom's first nuclear-powered submarine, launched by Queen Elizabeth II on Trafalgar Day 1960.
I name this ship Dreadnought. May God bless her and all who serve in her.
A S-3W reactor, a design made available as a direct result of the 1958 US-UK Mutual Defence Agreement, powered the submarine. The Polaris missile was built during the Cold War by Lockheed Corporation of California for the United States Navy. It was designed to be used as part of the Navy's contribution to the United States arsenal of nuclear weapons, replacing the Regulus cruise missile. The anti-nuclear movement is a social movement that opposes the use of nuclear technologies. Since the dawn of the atomic age, protests and demonstrations have occurred worldwide, giving a voice to the people. Many direct action groups, environmental groups, and professional organizations have identified themselves with the movement at local, national, and international level. The initial objective of the movement was nuclear disarmament, though the focus has shifted primarily to opposition to the use of nuclear power.
Well, look, the case is quite simple. We think that the policy which is being pursued by the Western powers is one which is almost bound to end in the extermination of the human race. And some of us think that that might be rather a pity.
Ozyorsk is a closed town in Chelyabinsk, Oblast, Russia. The city, as the people called it, was and remains a closed town because of its proximity to the Mayak plant, one of the sources of Soviet plutonium during the Cold War. The Mayak plant was built in 1945, in a great hurry and in total secrecy, as part of the Soviet Union's nuclear weapon program. German prisoners of war designed some of the best buildings there, with much of the labor provided by political prisoners of the time. The plant's original mission was to make, refine and machine plutonium for weapons. The Soviets' first and biggest bomb factory. The arms race started here. These people made the Soviet Union a superpower. On the iron gates, the number 235 appeared. Uranium-235 was the stuff of atomic bombs. 5 nuclear reactors were built for this purpose. Later, the plant came to specialize in reprocessing plutonium from decommissioned weapons and waste from nuclear reactors. Working conditions at Mayak resulted in severe health hazards and many accidents. The most notable accident occurred on the 29th of September 1957. Hundreds of people died, thousands were injured, and surrounding areas were evacuated. This nuclear accident, the Soviet Union's worst before the Chernobyl disaster, became a post-nuclear hell. Hundreds of square miles were left barren and unusable for decades and maybe centuries. July 31, 1991. The Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty is signed between the United States of America and the USSR on the reduction and limitation of strategic offensive arms. START negotiated the largest and most complex arms control treaty in history, and its final implementation in late 2001 resulted in the removal of about 80% of all strategic nuclear weapons then in existence. Today, close to 97% of all nuclear weapons are found in the United States and Russia. From the depths of despair and tragedy, we are often inspired and touched at a very deep level by the stories of survival, courage, and conviction. Sadako Sasaki was a Japanese girl who was 2 years old when the atomic bomb was dropped near her home. By November 1954, chickenpox had developed on her neck and behind her ears. A year later, purple spots had started to form on her legs. Sadako was diagnosed with leukemia, hospitalized and given at the most a year to live. Sadako's best friend, Shizuko Hamamoto, came to the hospital to visit and cut a golden piece of paper into a square and folded it into a paper crane. At first, Sadako didn't understand why Shizuko was doing this, but then Shizuko retold the story about the paper cranes. That one who folded 1,000 cranes was granted a wish. Inspired by the cranes, Sadako started folding them herself. Sadly, so the story goes, she fell short of her goal of folding 1,000 cranes, having folded only 644 before her death. Her friends completed the 1,000 and buried them all with her. The retelling of Sadako's story and others like it is so vital for future generations to learn from the past atrocities, to ensure human life is preserved and human rights are protected.